All right, fifth graders, this is Mr. Combs here, and we're going to get rolling with our week of June 1st, day 2 video. So, question number 1, without solving, compare using less than, equal to, or greater than. Okay, and so I see here on my left-hand side, I have a multiplication equation. I have 3/4 times 1/8, and then I have 1/8. And so really what this comes down to is our understanding of when we multiply by a fraction, what that does to the size of our product. So I know that if I'm even multiplying a fraction times any kind of other number, right, it's going to give me a smaller number than the number it's being multiplied by. So for example, in this one, I have 1/8 here, and I'm multiplying that by 3/4. So what that's going to tell me is that that product is going to be smaller than 1/8. So using that kind of knowledge and kind of that logic, I know that 1/8, just standing alone, is going to be greater than 3/4 of 1/8. Okay, and so remember, we can always replace that multiplication sign with our of. So 3/4 of 1/8 is going to be less than 1/8. And so we're going to kind of take that and we're going to kind of apply that to our understanding of this next problem. So question number 2, Derek ate 3/4 of 1/2 of a pie. Without finding the exact product, did Derek eat more or less than 3/4 of a pie? Explain how you know. So the first thing I'm going to do for you guys over here is I'm going to actually represent this, and I'm going to draw kind of a terrible pie over here. So there's my pie. Okay, and so I'm going to think of this. He ate 3/4 of 1/2 of a pie. So I know that that pie is split into halves. Okay, there's his half, and I'm going to use a different color marker, okay, to illustrate that being split into fourths now. So it's 3/4 of that 1/2, so I'm going to split that 1/2 into fourths, okay, and so he ate 3/4 of that half. What the question is asking us is, did he eat more or less than 3/4 of the pie? And so you can see he didn't get anywhere near close to eating what would be considered 3/4 of that pie. Okay, so explain how we know, and this is kind of that same idea of 3/4 of that 1/2. It's going to give us an answer that would be smaller than 1/2. So explain how you know. Derek ate 3/4 of a half. 1/2 is, and now I want you to think, is 1/2 smaller or greater than 3/4? And we know that 1/2 is smaller than 3/4. So that's going to be our answer for that one. So Derek ate 3/4 of a half. 1/2 is smaller than 3/4. Okay, so, and I'll just kind of add on to that, he ate less. Okay, all right, good. And so now we're just going to kind of keep applying our knowledge of when we're multiplying by fractions and kind of what they do to the magnitude of that product. So circle yes or no to indicate whether or not the statement is true about the product of 300 and 1/2. So 300 and 1/2. Okay, so if I'm multiplying 300 and 1/2, okay, is the product less than 200 times 1/2? So I know that if I'm multiplying 200 times 1/2, that product is going to be not only smaller than 200, but 200 is a smaller number than 300. So that product is not going to be less than 200 times 1/2. So that's going to be no for that one. The product is greater than 300. So this is where we need to really think about, we're multiplying by a fraction. Anytime I multiply a whole number by a fraction, it's going to be smaller than that original whole number. So that's going to be no. The product is greater than 200 times 1/2, okay? And so this is where me thinking about how this would kind of come into play and actually doing some solving would be a good idea. So first of all, I'm going to think about 300 wholes, so 300 over 1, okay, times 1/2, okay? I know that 300 times 1 gives me 300, 1 times 2 gives me 2, and that's 300 halves. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use kind of my knowledge of my multiples of 10 to figure this out. So how many times does 2 go into 300? Or we can also think about it 300 divided by 2. And I know that 300 divided by 2 is 150. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing over here with 200. I'm going to do 200 over 1, that's 200 wholes, times 1/2. 200 times 1 gives me 200. 1 times 2 gives me 2. Okay, 200 over 2, and that's going to be my division. So 200 divided by 2 is equal to 100. Okay, so the product is greater than 200 times 1/2. I just got my product of 150, so I'm going to say yes. Okay, and then also too, the product is less than 300. Okay, my product for 300 times 1/2 is 150 again, so I'm also going to circle yes for that. Okay, so those are our answers for question number 3. And now we're going to move on to question number 4. So Mrs. Hall, teaches in a room that is 70 feet wide and 30 feet long. Mrs. Smith teaches in a room that is half as wide but has the same length. How do the dimensions and area of Mrs. Smith's classroom compare to Mrs. Hall's? Okay, so the dimensions and area of Mrs. Smith's classroom compare to Mrs. Hall's. Draw a picture to prove your answer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do some labeling down here. Okay, I'm going to have Mrs. Hall. Okay, and then I'm going to have Mrs. Smith. Okay, and so these are problems that are really good for you guys to be thinking about drawing pictures of. So first thing, okay, we're going to draw a picture of her classroom. Okay, 70 feet wide, 30 feet long. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, all right, so for Mrs. Smith, okay, she has a room that is half as wide, but the same length. So I have 30 long, and then we're going to have 70 times 1/2 for that width, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to think about is actually finding out what Mrs. Smith's width of her classroom is going to be. So I'm going to do that over here. So I have 70 wholes times 1/2. Okay, 70 times 1 gives me 70. 1 times 2 gives me 2. Okay, 70 over 2. And to actually get that whole number, we're just going to do some quick standard algorithm division. 70 divided by 2. 2 goes into 7 3 times. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. 0 drops down. That's 10. 2 goes into 10 5 times. Okay, 2 times 5 gives me 10. 10 minus 10 gives me 0. Okay, so I know that Mrs. Smith's width is equal to 35. Okay, and so now what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to figure out the area. So I know that area is equal to length times width. All right, so I'm going to do 70 times 30 for Mrs. Hall's. Okay, so I have 0 times 0 gives me 0. 0 times 7 gives me 0. I'm going to leave that 0 in my ones place because we're starting in our tens. 3 times 0 gives me 0, and 3 times 7 gives me 21. Okay, so now I'm just going to add these up. I kind of got my work kind of smushed up here, but I know that this is going to be equal to 0 in my ones place, 0 in my tens place, 1 in my hundreds, and a 2 in my thousands. So for Mrs. Hall, her area is going to be equal to 2,100 square feet. Okay, and now we're going to do the same thing for Mrs. Smith. I'm going to do that work kind of up here. So I'm going to do 35 times 30. Okay, 0 times 5 gives me 0. 0 times 3 gives me 0. leave that 0 in the ones place. Now I'm going to move to my tens. 3 times 5 gives me 15. Leave the 5, regroup that 1. 3 times 3 plus 1 gives me 10. Okay, and so I have 0, and then I have 5, 0, and 1. Okay, so the area is equal to 1,050. Okay, all right, so when I'm thinking about this, not only are the dimensions of Mrs. Smith's width half as much, but I can also see that if I'm thinking about the overall area, if I think about 1,050 times 2, okay, I'll see if it's going to be how it's going to relate to Mrs. Hall. So I have 2 times 0 gives me 0. 5 times 2 gives me 10. Regroup that 1. 2 times 0 plus 1 gives me 2. 2 times 1, or gives me 1. 2 times 1 gives me 2. Okay, so I could also say that Mrs. Smith's area of her room is half as much. Okay, so I'm going to write that out in a complete sentence. I am going to use a handy dandy sticky note because I ran out of room. Okay, so we will say the width of Mrs. Smith's room is 1/2 as much, and the area is also 1/2 of Mrs. Hall's. Okay? All right, so I'm going to leave that right up there. Okay, so if you need to, you can pause the video and copy that down for your final answer. I'm going to kind of scoot this over and I'll give you guys a final view of all the work we did today. You did wonderful. Thank you for bearing with me. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to call, email your teachers, and ask them for help. So here is one kind of final shot of the work that we did today. I appreciate you all, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.